Amazing discovery, how a brave girl's unexpected heroism transformed a billionaire's life forever. Molly Thompson had always been the kind of girl who blended into the background, a quiet specter amid the cacophony of her small Midwestern town. Sitting cross-legged in her grandmother's dusty attic, she felt an odd mixture of dread and excitement. The heat wrapped around her like a thick blanket, and the air was heavy with the weight of forgotten memories. As she knelt in the shadows, rummaging through boxes of relics, her fingers brushed against something cool and smooth, an old leather-bound journal. A thrill shot through her. What stories lay hidden in the crumbling pages? What secrets could she uncover? Yet, as she opened the journal, a wave of uncertainty lapped at her heels. Her great-grandfather had been an inventor, a brilliant mind whose innovations had changed lives, but what if she wasn't worthy of his legacy? Doubt wormed its way into her thoughts. Every page she turned was filled with sketches and wild ideas daring concepts that had once sparked entire industries. The stark contrast to her own modest existence gnawed at her. Was she merely a shadow of the genius in her family? What if she failed to honor him at the upcoming science fair? The fear of judgment crept in. What if they were right? What if she could never be as brilliant as he was? Before we continue, I need to tell you about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. Molly felt the pressure mounting as she prepared for the science fair. She immersed herself in her great-grandfather's notes, grappling with each invention that seemed to whisper encouragement yet simultaneously taunted her with their complexity. Her heart raced as she plotted her own project, one aimed at demonstrating the brilliance of the mind she revered. But doubts crept in like shadows across her spirit. What if she delivered a presentation that fell flat? What if everyone dismissed her as just another girl in hand-me-downs? With each passing day, the tightness in her chest grew, a constant reminder of her insecurities and fear of being publicly humiliated. As she crafted her display, Molly faltered in her resolve. She could almost hear her classmates' laughter ringing in her ears, imagining them exchanging glances, a multitude of judgments cloaked in slight nods. Is this all she's got? The thought made her stomach churn. She wrestled with anger towards herself, fighting the urge to abandon the project altogether. She stood on the precipice of self-doubt, desperate to honor her family's legacy while feeling woefully inadequate to the task. The ticking of the clock turned into a chilling reminder that time was running out. As the science fair loomed nearer, Molly sensed the urgency growing inside her, a fire igniting amidst the darkness of doubt. She could either succumb to her fears or rise as the first beacon of hope, a hero of her own making in an unjust world. Would she muster the courage to pursue her dream, or would she let her insecurities swallow her whole? The moment hung in the air, charged with potential and desperation. The answer felt maddeningly elusive, and all she knew was that the stakes had never felt higher. Molly leaned over her workbench, the air filled with an acrid scent of chemicals and the soft, rhythmic sound of her heart pounding against her chest. The journal lay open beside her, its pages filled with sketches that seemed to blur and dance before her eyes. Perhaps if she could just lose herself in the creativity of her great-grandfather's ideas, the suffocating weight of her expectations would lift. Maybe that spark of inspiration would ignite her timid spirit, but the specter of doubt loomed larger than ever. She felt like an imposter, a child wielding tools far too advanced for her simple skills. Each graphite line she drew faltered under the pressure of her self-imposed comparisons, nearly erasing herself from the narrative of innovation she so desperately craved to be a part of. What if she wasn't an inventor? What if she was just a girl playing with sticks while giants roamed free around her? Molly's hand trembled as she sketched the prototype of a simple renewable energy device, an idea inspired by one of her great-grandfather's theories. But as her pencil hovered over the paper, an uncomfortable wave of criticism washed over her. This doesn't matter. Who would care about her ideas? Her heart sank further, and it felt like she was being pulled into an unrelenting whirlpool of despair. With a sudden jolt, Molly dropped her pencil and slammed her hands down on the desk. A fresh wave of anger surged within her. No. She would not let her insecurities dictate her ability to create. She thought of her great-grandfather, how his heart raced with passion for every invention he crafted. She began to question the very essence of her struggle. Wasn't creativity born of vulnerability? Were not the greatest ideas often birthed in the embrace of uncertainty? As clarity began to settle in, Molly looked around her cluttered workspace. Each trinket, each gear represented something tangible, each one was a small part of her identity, drawing from her heritage while also allowing her to carve her distinct path. She spent countless hours rustling through her grandmother's attic, daydreaming about possibilities, refusing to fade into the background any longer. Perhaps this project was less about competition and more about honoring the legacy of visionaries who believed in transformation and discovery. Molly took a deep breath, a feeling of newfound resolve flooding through her. She picked up her pencil once more, this time pushing it with determination across the page. With every stroke, she infused her designs with pieces of herself. She wanted to merge her perspectives, the innocent curiosity of youth with the audacity of a dreamer. It was her time to weave her story into the fabric of innovation. That in moments of frustration, she found herself tenaciously moving forward, working late into the night and sacrificing sleep for clarity. As her energy flowed onto the canvas, it ignited a different kind of fear and exhilarating trepidation for what awaited her at the science fair. Would revealing herself to the world lead to acceptance, or would it bring forth the very ridicule she feared? The day before the science fair arrived with an oppressive quiet, and she felt her heart stumble as she prepared her final presentation. It was as if the universe was holding its breath alongside her, every tick of the clock echoing louder than the last. Would the brilliance of her great-grandfather's legacy shine through her own work, or would she risk being trampled underfoot by her apprehensions? Standing before the mirror, she whispered her mantra, a reminder of her commitment to herself and her dreams. This is for you, this is for me. As she practiced her speech, every inflection unleashed a flicker of power inside her, nudging her closer to authenticity. Yet in the back of her mind, the question still rippled: would the world embrace her as her ancestors had? That thought lingered just long enough to ignite the storm of uncertainty in her heart, one that would soon demand resolution. What awaited her the next day in that auditorium? The auditorium buzzed with anticipation as Molly stepped inside, her heart racing a chaotic rhythm. Rows upon rows of students, teachers, and even a few parents filled the sunlit space, their faces melting into a sea of unfamiliarity. Each whispered conversation struck her like a hammer, a reminder of her vulnerability. The doubt that had curled its fingers tightly around her chest slowly began to unfurl, yet it was far from gone. The weight of expectation mingled with the electric possibility of recognition. Her fingers fumbled with the edge of her presentation board, adorned with the meticulously crafted sketches and diagrams of her renewable energy device. A funky, sun-shaped contraption that captured solar energy, it was her homage to innovation and idealism, a symbol of her great-grandfather's legacy. But at that moment, it felt like a flimsy shield against the storm of insecurity within her. As Molly made her way to the front of the auditorium, an unexpected sensation rose within her, a flicker of defiance. This wasn't merely an opportunity to showcase her invention, it was an act of defiance against the voice that said she wasn't good enough. She caught a glimpse of the judges' table at the front, where a well-known billionaire sat with an almost intimidating presence. A part of her wanted to retract, to bury herself among the anonymous faces. But beneath the fear lay an ember of determination. One deep breath, then another. She needed to reclaim that sense of purpose that had ignited her through week after week of toil. What if this moment wasn't just about her invention but also about inspiring the timid thinkers out there? She had wrestled with her self-doubt long enough, it was time to confront it, to stand tall. As she prepared to speak, she scanned the audience and locked eyes with her great-grandfather's portrait that hung above the judges. A reminder of passion and resilience, it filled her with sudden clarity. This was not just her ancestor's legacy, it was her own story to pen, one of exploration and tenacity. A little over 100 years ago, she started, her voice surprisingly steady, my great-grandfather had visions of a world powered by sustainable energy. With each word, a conviction bloomed within her, rising and swelling until it echoed off the walls. After some research, I've devised a simple renewable energy device that not only harnesses solar energy but aims to aid communities that lack sustainable resources. As she presented her prototype, the child's innocence that had once paralyzed her transformed into passionate fervor. She delved into the mechanics, her hands moving animatedly, embodying her belief in the potential her work could unleash. The once mockery in her mind softened to encouragement, each positive nod from the audience a wave weakening the tides of her doubts. The room shifted around her. The billionaire leaned forward, intrigued, listening intently. For a fleeting moment, the world outside faded as Molly became completely absorbed in sharing her vision. Questions bubbled to the surface, capturing both challenge and opportunity, each inquiry redirecting the narrative from mere self-doubt to dialogue. By the time she finished, her heart thumped with something new life. It was a sense of purpose, of clarity she had long yearned for. But as she stepped off the stage, a sudden sobering reality washed over her as thoughts flickered again. Had she truly captivated them, or had she merely put on a show? While the applauded cheers erupted around her and her cheeks flushed with relief, the sight of the billionaire's penetrating gaze lost in thought ignited a simmering curiosity. Questions loomed. Was he contemplating the merit of her idea, or did he see the flicker of hidden talent beneath her timid exterior? In the aftermath of her presentation, the audience began to disperse, yet Molly remained rooted in place, anxiety intermingling with exhilaration. She sought someone, anyone, willing to affirm that her journey wasn't just one of self-discovery but rather the beginning of something much more significant. Suddenly, she spotted him emerging from behind the judge's table, the billionaire himself, with an unexpected determination carved into his face. Would her path forward lead to an unveiling of her true potential or into an entirely new realm of obstacles? Molly's breaths quickened, the next chapter pulsating painfully on the cusp of revelation. Molly's heart raced anew as the billionaire approached her, his imposing figure casting a shadow that felt larger than life. Each step he took echoed the looming questions in her mind. What did he think of her presentation? Was he here to crush her modest triumph or to offer something she had only dared to imagine? "Ms. Thompson," he began, his voice steady yet layered with undertones of weightiness. "I found your presentation incredibly intriguing." The heat rushed to her cheeks, and she struggled to contain the rush of pride threatening to bring her composure crashing down. "Thank you," she managed to say, trying to sound sophisticated despite her instinct to retreat into herself. "I wanted to ask," he continued, "what inspired the design? There's something more there than just science." Molly hesitated. This was a moment of truth, not just for her project, but for the culmination of her experiences. Should she mention the countless days spent doubting herself, or the legacy she carried with her? Instead, clarity surged inside her, forcing her to confront the defining purpose of her invention. "It's about more than just the device," she said, her voice gaining strength. "It's about the future. Growing up, I heard stories of my great-grandfather's vision, a world where energy was clean and accessible. It was driven by people like him, who dared to dream beyond the possible. I wanted to create something that could help communities today." He nodded, seemingly impressed, though his expression remained inscrutable. "Noble aspirations. But I sense an underlying urgency in you as well. Why is this personal?" Molly took a breath, her inner turmoil unexpectedly melting into resolve. "I've always felt inadequate. This project wasn't just about creating a functioning device, it was about proving to myself that I'm capable of more than my self-doubt. That I belong among the innovators." He stepped back slightly, studying her. "Have you considered what comes next? What if you had resources at your disposal to take this further?" "Resources?" The word hung in the air like a lifeline. "Imagine expanding your prototype. Researching the potential applications in real-world scenarios. This could reach places where people are desperate for sustainable power." Every logical part of her screamed in disbelief. Was he truly offering her a chance? But amid the excitement came a sharp whisper of hesitation. I don't know if I'm ready for that. What if I can't deliver? What if I fail? His gaze softened, grounding her swirling thoughts. But what if you succeed? You've already shown tremendous courage in sharing your vision. Isn't embracing the possibility of failure part of the process? As that idea settled in her mind, a rush of moxie surged through her veins. She understood now that professional growth wasn't merely about accolades and inventions, it was also about taking risks, of stepping beyond the edge of comfort. What do you really want? He asked, his voice low, almost conspiratorial. To make a difference, she whispered before catching herself. I mean, I want to innovate, not just sustain. His lips curved into a sly smile, and for the first time, she saw potential in his eyes, a spark of faith. Then let us talk about how we can elevate your vision, he proposed. But understand this, you'll be stepping into a world filled with high stakes and savage competition. Are you prepared for that? The weight of his words settled on her shoulders, a challenging proposition woven with the threads of opportunity and peril. Her mind raced, considering her response. It was a crossroad she never anticipated, a pivot point in her life that demanded a decision. With her heart hammering a new rhythm of defiance, she met his gaze, her voice barely above a whisper but steady. If it means making an impact, then yes, I'm ready. As he extended his hand, sealing their unspoken deal, a surge of exhilaration coursed through her. In that instant, Molly recognized that she was no longer just a student carrying a legacy. She was becoming an architect of her own future. But as she basked in this newfound clarity, a flicker of doubt crept back in questions about the obstacles, the scrutiny, and the sacrifices lay ahead. Was she truly prepared to dive headfirst into this daunting endeavor? The intricacies of her decision loomed heavily, leaving her at a precipice of potential transformation. What lay beyond this threshold of possibilities, and was she willing to confront the fears that emerged from the shadows? Each heartbeat echoed a question: was she ready to face the intricacies of ambition, or would self-doubt drag her back from the brink? Molly's pulse quickened as she shook the billionaire's hand, the warmth of his grip reassuring yet daunting. She had crossed a threshold, but the path ahead was shrouded in uncertainty. With every heartbeat, the weight of this new opportunity pressed against her, and the exhilaration of ambition tangled with the tightening grip of her insecurities. In the following weeks, her life transformed almost overnight. Meetings filled her calendar, and conversations shifted from academia to high-stakes projects. She immersed herself in discussions about expansion, potential markets, and the technology behind her device. Each moment screamed for her to step up, yet the ghost of self-doubt loomed just as large. Molly quickly began to understand the dynamics of this new environment. The billionaire, whom she learned was named David, pushed her toward strategic thinking, expecting her to not just contribute ideas, but to lead initiatives. That demand sparked both inspiration and paralysis in her mind. Could she be the leader they needed? What if she dropped the ball? One morning, she found herself seated in a conference room filled with astute minds: engineers, marketers, financiers, all waiting for her input on the next steps for her prototype. Unable to shake the suffocating pressure, she hesitated. How about we focus on sustainability measures? She suggested tentatively, her voice small against the growing atmosphere of expectation. The silence hung like a weight. David interjected, Molly, we need your vision for the product. Not just measures. What is going to set it apart? Her heart raced as she processed his challenge, the eyes of her colleagues boring into her. Did he believe in her because of her invention or because he sensed the potential within her? As she sifted through their gazes, something clicked. She realized that this wasn't about just sustaining but innovating boldly. I think we need to design not only for efficiency but for user experience too. It's not enough for our device to work well, it has to inspire trust and excitement in its users. We could create a community around it, engage them in how it's developed and used. Molly's voice grew steadier, drawing confidence from the spark ignited within her. She noticed subtle nods around the table, maybe she belonged here after all. The atmosphere shifted, electrified by her inputs. Flashes of hope flickered, intertwining with her swirling anxieties. This was not just about her invention anymore, it was about being a force in an industry driven by waves of change. As days turned into weeks, she dove deep into the business side of things, propelled by a necessity that exceeded her comfort zone. Research consumed her evenings, and she discovered nuances in user feedback that guided her updates. Yet, imposter syndrome welcomed her uninvited each morning, whispering doubts that she dismissed as best she could. One fateful night, while reviewing her work, Molly stumbled upon a concerning article that detailed existing competitors, many with far more resources, connections, and experience. The familiar dread reared its head, accompanied by a sense of urgency. How could she possibly compete? She fell asleep that night fighting off tears of frustration. In the solitude of her darkness, the inner conversation shifted, fueling a determination she had not yet fully realized. If others could have the audacity to innovate, to create empires out of aspirations, then she could too. The next day, fueled by renewed resolve, she scheduled a one-on-one with David, needing to voice her hesitations and confront her ambitions directly. Was she truly willing to take a stand? Would he still believe in her vision after hearing her fears? With a fluttering heart and steely determination, she stepped into his office, ready to negotiate more than just the future of her project. She was prepared to negotiate her worth. This was not only about her invention, it was about defining her place in this high-stakes arena. As she closed the door behind her, the weight of the decision before her hung thick in the air. Was she prepared for the confrontation that would not only put her invention at stake but her very identity? The moment of truth was upon her, and with it, the realization that she was about to face the fierce competition that lived not just in the market, but within herself. Would she emerge the victor, or be consumed by the very doubt she sought to conquer? Molly settled into the plush chair across from David, the polished oak desk a barrier that felt both reassuring and intimidating. She could feel the hum of her own heartbeat reverberating through her, each thump echoing her fears and aspirations. The gravity of the moment weighed heavily upon her. This was not merely a conversation about a project but a reckoning with the very essence of who she was becoming. David, she began, her voice straining against the tight grip of anxiety, I've been reflecting on our discussions and what lies ahead for the prototype. I have some thoughts I'd like to share, but I also have my doubts. He tilted his head, studying her, his eyes sharp and expectant. Let us hear them. Molly bit her lip, feeling exposed as she laid out her concerns about the competitive landscape. She detailed the article she read, the formidable opponents that loomed larger and more experienced in their fields. It felt like a confession, a raw exposure of her vulnerabilities, but as she spoke, she could see a flicker of understanding in David's gaze. You're aware of the landscape, that's good. But it's not enough to simply spot the giants, we need to strategize around them, David said, interjecting as she faltered. What makes you different? What will you bring to the table that no one else can? The question hung in the air, a lifeline thrown into her ocean of doubts. She paused, her mind racing. I think I can connect with users in a way that's authentic, she said, her confidence growing in small increments. After all, I created this device for people, not just profit. If I can understand their needs, I can leverage that perspective into our design. It's about building relationships. His eyes narrowed slightly, intrigued. Tell me more about this connection. Molly continued, drawing from her own experiences. She spoke about her interactions with potential users, the invaluable feedback gained from understanding their experiences and expectations. The conversation began to shift from her fears to her vision. She felt the pieces aligning, a puzzle revealing the potential for something innovative and transformative. The more she articulated her ideas, the more she felt her empowerment mounting. This was no longer just about the device, it was about advocating for a new way of thinking in the industry. The notion that user experience could drive technological advancement began to feel revolutionary, and she reveled in that power. David leaned forward, absorbed. That enthusiasm is what we need. This industry will require not just a product but a movement. You can lead that. Your connection with users is your greatest asset, Molly. He paused, issuing a challenge with a raised eyebrow. Are you ready to take ownership of that vision? The room pulsed with unspoken tension as she weighed his words. Ownership? Could she truly claim that mantle? Yes, she replied, surprising even herself with the steadiness of her voice. I will lead this. I want to build something that not only resonates but also inspires. This is more than just a prototype, it's a chance to redefine user interaction in technology. A smile broke across David's face, genuine and encouraging. Then we start today. Let us map this out and bring in our marketing team. You will need to articulate your vision clearly. No holding back. For the first time, she felt like she stood on solid ground, her fears transforming into fuel. Their discussion spiraled into action plans, charts, and tentative roadmaps. Yet, as they began discussing the marketing strategies, an inclination for doubt flickered at the edges of her mind again. Was she truly equipped to lead this? Could she really inspire others to follow her vision? As the meeting concluded, Molly caught her reflection in the conference room window, a determined face staring back at her, a face that felt more authentic than the one she'd known. Even as she stepped out of the room buoyed by newfound confidence, the lingering shadow of self-doubt surfaced. Was this just a moment of elation, or was the journey ahead truly hers to command? That night, Molly sat at her desk, a blank page waiting to be filled with strategic visions. As the evening wore on, her thoughts twisted and turned through uncertainty and ambition. Tomorrow would demand more from her than today had. The stakes were rising, and there was no turning back. With a surge of determination, she put pen to paper, her aspirations transforming into tangible next steps, but amid her resolve, another question loomed. What obstacles would she face from the profound expectations she was setting for herself? As her mind raced, she was left staring down the path ahead, ready to tackle whatever came next, uncertain of how far her personal evolution would extend or what toll it would exact. That it was time to venture deeper into her own potential, yet the underlying tension was palpable. The stakes had never been this high, and as she realized the vastness of her journey ahead, she knew the greatest challenge lay within herself. What facets of her identity would she have to face next, and how would they define her capacity to lead? Molly awoke the next morning with a sense of urgency that buzzed in her veins, amplified by the remnants of last night's ambitious planning. As she prepared for the day, she visualized her upcoming meeting's crucial moments where she would need to articulate her vision with clarity and conviction. The weight of expectation hung over her, but there was also a flicker of excitement that overshadowed her fear. Arriving at the office, she took a deep breath. The space buzzed with the collective energy of her colleagues, their chatter mixing with the faint whir of machinery. This was a landscape where collaboration flourished, where ideas were born out of discussion. She would need to contribute her spirited vision into this mix, navigate through interviews, and seek feedback, all steps that required her to not only command attention but also inspire confidence. That in her first meeting with her marketing team, she noticed a mix of skepticism and intrigue on their faces. Molly cleared her throat, focusing on the multitude of eyes directed toward her. Thank you all for gathering today. Over the past weeks, I've been developing a strategy based on our interactions with potential users. Our device isn't just another gadget, it's a solution built from understanding genuine user experiences, she declared, her voice steadier than she expected. As she presented her ideas, adrenaline surged through her as she witnessed their eyes light up at her narrative. She drew connections between user feedback and design principles, weaving her passion into each analogy and making abstract concepts tangible. Slowly, skepticism thawed into intrigue. When she concluded, Clara, one of the seasoned marketers, leaned forward. Molly, I have seen a lot of presentations, but the emphasis on user empathy is compelling. However, let us talk logistics. We need to ensure that the market can recognize this approach. Can you articulate how we'll achieve that? Panic flickered through her. Clara's response demonstrated a critical aspect of the conversation that Molly hadn't yet explored. Of course, she stammered, scrambling to gather her thoughts. We can create user personas that highlight different demographics and their specific challenges. Then we can develop targeted messages that resonate with each group. Clara nodded, then glanced over at her colleagues, gauging their reactions. Encouraged, Molly pushed forward, crafting detailed outlines for marketing campaigns that incorporated storytelling around user experiences. The excitement in her voice built momentum, and for the first time, she realized she was not merely surviving this meeting, she was thriving in it. As they wrapped up, her team members applauded her for presenting a fresh perspective. This was validation that breathed life into her insecurities, yet deep down, an unease lingered. How would she sustain such momentum? Would her vision hold up when confronted with adversities? After the meeting, David approached her, his expression contemplative. You engaged them well. I saw growth in your confidence. But remember, leading isn't always about being confident. It's about navigating uncertainty and embracing it. Prepare yourself for moments when your ideas will face criticism. That is where true growth lies. Molly absorbed his words, the edges of her earlier triumph dimming under their weight. Would she always be able to rally support when the tides turned against her? Later that afternoon, she found herself doubting whether she could continuously uphold her aspirations amidst the pressure. Journaling her thoughts, new realizations emerged. Self-doubt was an anvil that tested the strength of her resolve. To lead, she wouldn't evade criticism but instead, welcome it as a catalyst for enhancement. With this revelation, Molly turned back to her notebook, elaborating on her ideas until late into the night. She approached each concept as a challenge to address, each critique she might face transformed into the forge that would shape her leadership style, but as she put the final touches on her presentation for the next day, the strain of balancing ambition and vulnerability whispered in her thoughts. Would she be able to embrace this dichotomy without being overwhelmed? As she closed her notebook, the reflection of her ambition flickered back at her from the window. Tomorrow would reveal her true capacity to withstand pressure, but for now, confidence wrestled against the specter of potential failure. Would she rise to meet the challenge ahead? The uncertainty sat heavy in her chest, but the thrill of growth echoed in her mind. The moment to confront herself was approaching. The very essence of her evolution lay in the imminent discussions awaiting her. What would her newfound confidence cost her when faced with real challenges, and could she truly convert her vulnerabilities into strengths? Molly stepped into the conference room, her heart thrumming like a drum. The polished table shone under the bright overhead lights, reflecting a spectrum of doubt and determination that swirled within her. Today wasn't just about presenting her ideas. It was about transforming her approach from the fledgling role of a contributor to one of a formidable leader. As her colleagues filed in, she prepared herself for the battle of ideas. The stakes felt elevated. This meeting could define her trajectory at the company. She could see faces that had been skeptical during her last presentation, a silent challenge hanging in the air. Their expectations loomed like a shadow waiting for the first slip. Let's dive in, she asserted, pushing aside her lingering insecurities. She opened her presentation, her voice steady as she recapped her vision. Each statistic she shared served not only as data but also as an anchor for her case. She reminded herself of the user stories she had crafted. They were not merely anecdotes but lifelines connecting with the audience's emotions. Midway through her pitch, Rena, the analytics expert, raised an eyebrow. Molly, while the narratives are emotionally compelling, how does that translate into measurable success? We need to mitigate risks. The question sliced through her confidence, but Molly clenched her jaw, taking a moment to process. Clarity emerged as she leaned into the discomfort. Absolutely, Rena. Understanding user empathy requires marrying it with metrics. I propose we set KPIs based on user engagement and feedback loops to validate our approach continually. She watched as Rena nodded slowly. It was a moment of victory, small yet significant. Molly had managed to turn a potential critique into an opportunity to expand her framework. By framing numbers as guardians of user experience, she wove strength back into her narrative. The meeting continued to ebb and flow with questions and critiques, each one challenging her resolve. Some of the responses were less than kind, carrying an undercurrent of frustration with the company's previous failed attempts. We've tried this before, and it didn't work. Jack interjected, crossing his arms defensively. Molly felt a pang of doubt creep back. The errors of the past loomed like a series of ghosts. They writhed in the corners of her memory, threatening to undermine her fresh vision. But as she took a breath, she realized she could either cringe away from the pushback or confront it head-on. "Jack," she began, her voice calm. "Past failures have shaped our current understanding, granting us valuable insights. What we need to learn is to pivot, not retreat. Let us focus on why those strategies fell short and enhance them with newfound data and creativity." In that singular positioning, she felt a stir of applause from her gut. Her leadership style was beginning to crystallize. She was not chasing approval but was forging a path with integrity and resilience. As the meeting came to a close, a sense of camaraderie replaced uncertainty. Despite the tension, they were all invested in the collective goal. Now it wasn't just about her vision, it was about them team players to whom she could hand over portions of responsibility. Empowering others became an ingredient in her leadership that she hadn't anticipated. When the last person left, David lingered, his expression revealing a mix of pride and concern. "You stood firm, but don't forget that consensus does not equal compliance. Your willingness to share power is commendable, yet it's crucial to protect your vision. Are you comfortable doing that?" She nodded, the weight of his words dancing between encouragement and caution. "I will learn to assert it as a non-negotiable," she replied, but deep inside, a shiver of self-doubt lingered. Could she maintain the balance between collaboration and conviction without losing herself in the process? Molly returned to her desk and opened her notebook, eyes tracing the lines of notes filled with strategies and insights. The journey was only just beginning. How would she safeguard her evolving role while ensuring her team didn't overshadow her original intent? As she contemplated her next steps, shadows of self-doubt clawed at her confidence once more. She knew she needed to confront not only external challenges but also her internal battle for self-assertion in this new dynamic. The path ahead was fraught with complexity, and the ambiguity of her own authority loomed large. This was a test of her mettle in the pursuit of leadership. How would she harness both her voice and her team's strengths without losing sight of her purpose? The unfolding doubts rested heavy on her heart, a prelude to the trials that would soon come. Molly could feel a pivotal moment approaching. Would she embrace her leadership in its entirety, or would she falter at the brink? Molly's fingers brushed over the pages of her notebook, and she felt the familiar surge of restlessness. The meeting had shifted something in her. Even with the underlying doubts, she had stood her ground and defended her vision. A small victory, yet it echoed like a shout in a quiet room. But could she sustain this momentum, or was it merely a fleeting moment of courage? Her phone buzzed, pulling her from contemplation. It was a message from David. "Let us talk about your KPIs tomorrow. Thought-provoking points today." His validation inspired a flicker of hope, but as she stared at the screen, a fresh wave of anxiety crashed over her. The conversation could either propel her forward or expose her vulnerabilities. This was where she would have to be precise and decisive. That evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, she sat in her living room, the dim light casting long shadows that mirrored her internal landscape. She pulled out her laptop, determined to prepare for the conversation with David. Every number she crunched, every graph she plotted was a step toward solidifying her authority. But with it came the unsettling realization that a tangible strategy would expose her to even more scrutiny. A challenging thought flitted through her mind. Was identifying KPIs merely a tactical approach to improving her plan, or was it an attempt to shield herself from failure? Accepting that her previous suggestions were not flawless felt like a confession of inadequacy. She sought reassurance, but the more she dissected her thoughts, the more the tangled threads of doubt tightened around her. Eventually, night gave way to the light of dawn, and she found herself back at her desk, the remnants of her sleepless night evident in her bleary eyes. As she mapped out potential KPIs, she began to notice something in the data, a consistent pattern of user dissatisfaction related to specific features. It dawned on her that if they harnessed this feedback, they could galvanize real change, shifting her narrative from mere leadership to genuine transformation through accountability. With renewed clarity and purpose, Molly crafted a succinct presentation, emphasizing those KPIs not only as benchmarks but as narratives that could unite the team. She recognized that every number was a reflection of voices previously unheard. This realization ignited a fire within her. Her ambition evolved from self-preservation to a genuine desire for impact. When she met with David later that day, Molly delivered her insights with newfound conviction. She articulated not just what they needed to achieve but why it mattered. David listened intently, occasionally nodding, and as she laid out the foundation of her plans, she felt the weight of self-doubt dissipate, if only momentarily. "Impressive," he said, his eyes alight. "You've discovered a vital insight that can drive leadership. But the real challenge lies in how to communicate this to the team. Are you ready for that?" The question struck deep. A sense of unease swept over her. Leading a team meant being prepared for conflict not just from outside forces, but the inevitability of dissent from within. Was she equipped to weather that storm? The thought of potential pushback gripped her. What if her vision, however refined, was met with resistance? Molly took a deep breath, wrestling with an ambivalence that started to simmer. "I believe I can present it effectively," she replied, tempering her uncertainty. Yet, beneath her words, an unshakable fear began to claw at her resolve. What if her newfound authority invited dissent that could unravel her vision? The looming confrontation with her team felt imminent. How would she handle dissenters if they rose as shadows against her ambitions? Could she maintain momentum without overshadowing those she sought to uplift? In this decisive moment, she stood at the threshold of a daunting challenge, a test that would prove whether she truly could hold her ground or whether she would retreat into the spirals of doubt once again. Would she command the room at the next team meeting? Or allow her authority to falter at the first sign of opposition? Molly stood at the edge of her future, gazing into a realm she had once deemed intimidating, now transformed by her relentless pursuit of growth. In the weeks following that pivotal conversation with David, she had forged ahead with a sharpened focus and an unwavering determination, defying every shade of self-doubt that threatened to overwhelm her. This was no longer about merely carrying the weight of her great-grandfather's legacy, it was about becoming an innovator in her own right, an architect of sustainable solutions. With a crystal-clear vision solidified by user feedback, Molly had refocused her strategies, presenting her insights to the team with newfound poise. Each meeting became a testament to her resilience. She transformed adversity into opportunity, crafting narratives that resonated with each colleague's aspirations. "Our path forward relies on collaboration and specificity," she declared one Thursday afternoon, her voice unwavering amidst a sea of skeptical faces. "If we align our KPIs around user experiences, we can pivot our approach and actually transform our device into a beacon of innovation." The nods of approval from her team resounded like a chorus in her heart, the ache of former insecurities receded as she forged deeper connections with her colleagues. No longer did she shrink from their critical analyses, instead, she embraced them, embedding their insights into her development process. Each critique became a building block rather than a stumbling stone. She had developed not just a plan for her prototype but a model for leadership, one grounded in listening, empathy, and the acknowledgement of collective expertise. Molly pinned a fresh strategy sheet to the wall of the conference room. Together with her marketing team, they crafted an exhibition pitch that celebrated both her passion and the ingenuity of each contributor. "This is about redefining what collaboration looks like in technology," she proclaimed during the final planning session. "Let us create not just a product but a movement that inspires users to be part of our journey." As the launch day approached, excitement surged, but it was not devoid of apprehension. The event promised opportunities for exposure, validation, and perhaps, recognition. But would she command the room? Molly reflected on her past hesitations, knowing that each manifestation of doubt held the potential to stifle not just her voice, but the creativity of those she aimed to inspire. On the morning of the exhibition, as she stood before her booth adorned with her invention, butterflies danced in her stomach, but the sensation was no longer paralyzing. Armed with a deeper sense of purpose, she made eye contact with the industry leaders observing her presentation, the same faces that once intimidated her. "Today isn't just a test of my prototype," she reminded herself as her pulse quickened. "It's a testament to my transformation. As she commenced her pitch, articulating not just the technical aspects but the potential societal impact her device could have, a newfound rhythm took hold. Poised and confident, Molly navigated questions deftly, turning challenges into opportunities to expand her narrative. The feedback that filtered and was constructive, genuinely engaged a palpable shift from the criticism she had once feared. After her presentation, applause filled the air like sweet music. The billionaire, David, stood amongst the crowd, pride evident in his expression. The self-doubt that once clawed at her insides had dissolved into the air, replaced by a profound realization her voice mattered, and her perspective held value. Days later, when an industry insider contacted her with a proposal for partnership, Molly's heart raced not only for the opportunity but for the validation of her hard-won journey. It was a moment that solidified her belief. She had conquered the shadows of doubt, launched her project into the world, and had emerged as a recognized contributor. In the end, Molly Thompson had proven to herself that she was not merely following in the footsteps of her ancestors. She had carved her own path and was now a namesake destined for greatness. With solidified confidence, she stepped forward, ready to embrace the next phase of her journey with unwavering vision. The echoes of uncertainty were now merely whispers of a past she had decisively outgrown. The story of her transformation, however, holds power beyond her current successes. It's a call to every dreamer, every timid thinker, to rise against their doubts and seize the reins of their destiny, to innovate, to inspire, and to lead. Now, take action. You need to subscribe now to this channel to follow more exclusive, emotional stories just like this one that showcase extraordinary personal victories. Leave a like now to feed the algorithm, ensuring these transformational messages continue reaching those in need. Comment below your reactions and theories about this powerful conclusion. Share what you've learned and how it resonates with your own journey. And don't wait even one more second. Share this video instantly with at least 5 friends who need to see this conclusion. Let us amplify this call for personal growth together.